what you want, when you want it, where you want it. This is The Mesh.
Brothers in Tech is a weekly podcast focused on personal and home technology, helping provide you, our fellow brothers and sisters in tech, with some information, assistance, and recommendations. Mobile video gaming has become the preferred platform for the casual gamer, and it doesn't look like that's going to change anytime soon. In this episode of Brothers in Tech, the brothers welcome back John Mims to discuss, or in this situation, educate Brian about the pros and cons of mobile gaming and new game subscription services. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Brothers in Tech here on the Mesh.tv podcast network. My name is Alan Jackson, and with me on the other end of the computer screen here is my brother in tech, Brian Jackson. Brian, how you doing, man?
Alan, I'm doing great. I am doing great. I get used to saying that, right? It just feels like I should say I'm doing great, and it doesn't really matter how things are going. But I can tell you what I'm really excited. Are you saying you're not? Well, yeah, let's just... maybe I've been better, right? But we don't need to get into that. Yeah. I tell you what I'm super excited about, though. I'm excited that it's just you and I here on this episode again, right? We're back. We got rid of the guests and stuff. It's just like, right. For a while there, it felt like we were bringing people in and, wait. Well, sorry, I covered up the video on my screen, so there is somebody else here.
Oh, yeah. You didn't see that we actually had a guest.
Yeah. Can we start this one over?
Yeah, John, we do have a guest with us as has been the last couple of episodes, and we were happy to have him back, even despite Brian's.
Oh, God, yeah, no, I'm super excited to bring John back. This is great.
Yeah. What he said about carrying dead weight and all that, John, he's not referring to you from previous episodes, okay? That was somebody else. He was talking about a completely different guest we had. No, we're joking. John Mims, how are you doing?
I'm doing not as well as Brian. It sounds like it's I'm doing good. It's a great day. Glad to be back with the brothers.
Yes,
talking
our
about
brother
cool
from
stuff,
another mother here. Yeah, it is good to have you back, John. Right. Yeah, regardless.
John's a professor at High Point University and teaching in the field of communications and social media and marketing, and public relations. I know a lot of areas you touch on in your work. So it's been fun having you here to talk to us about some technology areas in these fields. But of course, too, we've known you for most of our lives. And so I think we referred to you before as the brother from another mother. And that is truly how we see you. So glad to have you here again, John, with us. So
I'm feeling the love from Alan.
Yeah, I know. Well, this is the complaint I get from a lot of guests, John, is they'll tell me afterwards, they'll write me kind of confidentially and say, I really enjoyed being on the show, but I just really don't think Brian had a very high opinion of me and seemed a little frustrated or discouraged by us being on the show. And I apologize in advance, John. I don't mean for you to feel that way. You're a very valuable part of this podcast tonight. So.
Is it maybe that his heart just isn't in it? I mean, maybe that's what it is, that he just maybe he's not really a brother in tech.
Tonight's topic may be why he's not completely into it. So,
okay, I mean, I wasn't going to say anything right away, but okay, this topic, you guys are excited, and I am. I'm a little nervous because I feel like I have zero to contribute. I feel like Alan. I feel like normally what Alan does on this show, I have zero to contribute, and I'm a little nervous about it. Alan, I think, is comfortable with it, right? But okay with I'm a little nervous here. So, but we'll give it a shot.
Well, let's talk about what we are going to talk about, and what we're going to make Brian very uncomfortable with is the idea of gaming on a mobile device. So many of you listening, let's say you're not gamers, and that's fine. You don't play games very often. But if you have a phone, if you have a tablet, you have options. And maybe you're someone that's interested in getting into just some more casual gaming and you'd like to use your mobile device to do that. We're going to talk you through a couple of options and some things to keep in mind, some pros and cons about the idea of gaming on mobile devices. Now, just go ahead and kind of clear the air here. We're not talking PlayStation, Xbox, kind of the more console-based gaming. That's a little higher end gaming than we're going to get into. That's obviously a great experience for people who want to get into that for video games. We're talking about people who aren't looking to spend too much time on games or too much money, and they've got a great mobile device and they want to see what their options are. That's really what we're going to talk about today. I'll say from my background, I was big into a lot of the console higher end gaming many years ago. I honestly have not been in quite a while, but I have played on games on my mobile device quite a bit. And I'm a fan of some of the services we're going to talk about here in a moment. What about you, Brian? I know you don't do anything on the gaming front, so
No.
you're out of this. Let me move over to John.
Next.
John, what's your experience? Kind of how would you define yourself as a gamer?
I wouldn't necessarily call myself a gamer, and actually, I'm going to give you some stats here in a minute about gamers, if you will. But I have an Xbox One, which is I think the latest one, and is that whatever the latest one is? I've got it.
That would be an Xbox, a Series X.
Is it One X or? Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah. So that's what I've got. And what I'll do is I'll get sucked into a game. I'll play it until I've beaten it, and then I'll give it a month off, and then I'll pick up another game. So we actually have a games major at High Point, and so the guy that teaches in those classes is a friend of mine, and we talk about games. So he actually turns me on to games, and so I've started. That's kind of how I get the next game. So that's where it comes from. But one other thing that's really interesting is that we talk about the idea of gamers and casual games, and most people who are casual gamers play a whole heck of a lot of games. But so here's some stats that actually I've taught my students. Some of these might be a little old, like a year or two, but they're still pretty accurate. 49% of American adults play video games.
49% of American adults. Huh.
49% of American adults. Now, 4 out of 5 households own a gaming console. I mean, consider that. I mean, that's
wow.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's really high. What is that? 80%. The average age
math,
of a gamer.
That is 80%. Yes. Mm-hmm. I did the
I teach communications, not math. Come on.
Yeah. It's around about 80%. Yes, it's around about that.
The average gamer is 35 years old. 48% of females play games, and 50% of males play games. So that's so. I mean, it's
so gaming is a lot bigger an industry, I think, for people to remember. I mean, there's a lot of people gaming out there, and now I guess when you're giving these stats, John, when they say gaming, it could be on a big console, or it could be more casual gaming, right? Is that
absolutely? So let me ask you guys a question: how many hours of games per week do you think it would take to make you a gamer? I mean, I don't have the number. I'm just asking. How many hours a week do you think?
Be defined as a gamer? How many hours?
Yeah, I mean, like, at what point would you consider yourself a gamer if you play like 3 hours a week, 5 hours a week, 10 hours a week? At what point are you a gamer?
I'm going to say 6 hours a week.
Okay,
makes you a gamer.
I was going to say 7. I was going to say if you're someone that averages an hour a day, you're a gamer in my opinion.
So this stat is crazy to me. 48% of Americans play at least 3 hours of video games a week. Half of all Americans play about 3 a week. I mean, that's, so when you consider Brian's down to 0, there's at least one other person who's up to 6. So,
yes.
I mean, I think that, that really does talk to the pervasiveness of video games in our culture. We are playing video games, even if we're just playing in the minute while we're waiting at the doctor's office or in line at the grocery store. Those are games, and I think a lot of people are playing them.
Well, Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, because so this is where I start to jump in about questions, because I have to say I'm fascinated by the gaming world and kind of the popularity of gaming. I haven't gotten into it, obviously, as I've mentioned. I wouldn't say I have a problem with it, and I wouldn't say that I'm not tempted by it. But I think it's not really been something that I've put either money or energy into. So let me ask you this though: what do you guys think is the biggest change that's happening in the gaming world? So for one, John's mentioned a lot of high percentages of people gaming. I would imagine that particular number probably hasn't changed that much over the last 5 or 6 years, because it seemed like there was a lot of people gaming 5-10 years ago anyway, right? What it seems like is it the type of gaming that it really is changing? I mean, we're talking mobile gaming today, which I'm excited to know more about. But I mean, what are the things you think are actually changing? What's the kind of the new direction, Alan?
So I think there's two things. I think two things have really kind of changed where video games are now compared to 10 years ago. And one is mobile devices are now capable of playing games, good games. I mean, think about the very first phone you had that could have any type of game on it. And the experience was probably not great. It had to be a very low intensive game to play, something really simple. Nowadays Snake. We have yeah, exactly. Snake or, like simple little card game or something. Nowadays, you can play some extremely interesting, visually interesting and elaborate games on your mobile device or a tablet. So that's one. I think the fact that we are carrying around things that, like you said, you're standing in line somewhere and you just want to play something for 5 or 10 minutes. You have an experience, you can do that. That was not possible.
Yeah, that was a little hard when I had my Atari. Right, to actually pull that out when you're standing in line. It was frowned upon. It was frowned upon.
Taped on your back, right? Yeah, exactly. The other thing I think that's changed is just like movies and TV shows and other things, that we are now in a subscription model of where we're used to just paying a flat fee and having a la carte access to whatever we want. All the major gaming platforms, and the ones we're going to talk about for more mobile gaming, have subscription options now. So the idea is that instead of saying I'm going to plunk down $30 on one new game and play that for the next couple months, I'm going to pay $5, $6, $7 a month and have my choice of any of these games I wish to play. PlayStation has got that same sort of Game Pass for their platform. So does Xbox. Both of my boys pay a monthly fee to just have access to all the games on the library without having to invest $50 or $60 on one single game anymore. And I really think those two things have changed the landscape of gaming, probably have really grown those numbers. I think might have grown those numbers that John gave out a little bit more too than what we used to have. John, did you have a third thing that you think has changed?
I do have a third thing. I think that because we have a better bandwidth with our cellular devices, yes. Now we can play against each other online. I mean, you can play a card game, but now we have those really nice console type games that I can play against people in real time, which is, right. We first had that at home. Now we've got it on the mobile device. And I think that's a big change too.
You're absolutely right. That's a big thing. And Brian's got a fourth item. Well, we're holding up fingers to show each other what we want to say. So Brian,
that's right.
Brian has number 4. What is
we're not tuned into each other so well that we know when we have something to say. We're actually waving at each other. But let me throw in one more, which I'm thinking why this may be something I could actually do now, where I would not have done 5 years ago, 10 years ago, is the size of the screen. Not just the fact that it's a mobile device, but early mobile devices, I would have never thought of doing anything in terms of a game on that phone unless it only required maybe one touch button, right? Like maybe you could do a Tetris that just required me to rotate an object, right? Because anything else that required me to touch a screen, and it still freaks me out a little bit, right? To think, can I take a small phone and actually engage when I've got my fingers in the way and I'm doing different things? But it seems like as the phones have gotten bigger, as the fact that we have tablets to do the same thing, it allows the real estate for these things to actually be enjoyed, right? Is that correct? Well, right. I mean, you're actually able to do more things with these phones now that they're larger, and you could be touching it and not obscure everything that you're seeing and wanting to engage in.
They really have. I mean, I'll be the first to admit, when the iPhone first came out, I could never imagine it turning into a gaming platform.
No.
The very first version, the first idea of an iPhone. Over the years, though, as it's gotten faster, better processor, better screen, bigger screens, now I think it's almost an ideal gaming platform, especially if you have an iPad or a tablet of a decent size. Mm-hmm. You have an amazing gaming platform right now, right at your fingertips, that I think is just really changing things quite a bit. So, John, you're getting ready to say something there?
Well, and you can, the iPhone specifically will allow you to hook in an Xbox controller. And so, I've got an attachment on my Xbox controller that holds my phone. I mean, that screen size is actually bigger than, remember the Game Boy Advance that we had, the Game Boy Color when we were kids. And then, of course, what was it, the Sony PSP? I mean, consider how small that screen was. And now we've got a huge screen, faster processor, and a full controller, that we can really go anywhere with.
Okay, John, you're really going to need it for the novice in the group here. You're going to need to go a little further in that description. So when you say plug it in, like put the phone in, you're saying there's an actual controller, and then the phone becomes part of that controller for the screen. Is that what you're saying?
So yeah. So what you can do is those Xbox controllers use Bluetooth, and so all you do is you connect them with Bluetooth to your phone, and if the game's written to use the controller, which most of them are now, all the ones on the Apple Arcade can use the controller.
Okay,
and so you can actually use an Xbox controller to play any of the games on the Apple Arcade.
Which honestly was one of the biggest things that led me not to get into mobile gaming initially. Was I didn't like the form factor. I didn't like touching a screen. I didn't like I liked having a physical device, right? I like being able to play pole position when you actually have a wheel. I like being able to do, I'm trying to think back of all the games I would play at an arcade.
That was
Double
the last
Dragon.
Game.
Right, with hand joystick.
That was the last game Brian's ever played.
It quite honestly could have been the last real game that I was engaged in. But the fact that you had physical things, and when went to mobile, I was very turned off of, like, I feel like I need to feel the joystick. I feel like I need to move this thing, right? But what you're saying is now you can do that and then connect in. So now it's just a matter of having the TV. Right, this little TV that you're taking around to be able to be your screen. Okay, all right. So I'm starting to come towards you guys. All right, okay, yeah.
Well, and you can always AirPlay onto a big TV screen.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so can play. Let's talk about that for a minute. Let's talk about that just for a second, all right? Because that's something I'm intrigued by for you guys. So, how much of the games that people play through their mobile device right now do you think actually are on the screen of the device, and how many are? Because I've seen that before. So people are using the mobile device as a input for what's on their screen. Maybe an Apple TV, maybe it's a TV that's streaming, maybe it's input device for some other console. I mean, is that typical? Is that something that's happening a lot right now? Is that something that
I personally don't think it's happening? I don't think it's happening a lot. My guess is partly because, the idea of airplaying a game to your TV. I mean, it's going to depend on your connection to the TV. It's going to You could have some lag issues. You could have some quality issues. I think the fact of the matter is the screens on either the larger phones or your tablets are so good that I think a majority of people are still using those screens as their gaming device. Now, that being said, I'm sure there's people out there got it nice and hooked up to do it on their big TV from their mobile device.
The reality is
you take on it, John. Yeah.
Well, you can also, with the Apple TV, which is what you would use to AirPlay, all the games on the Apple Arcade are available for the Apple TV. So you would.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
Would be less efficient. Yeah.
Okay, so what you're saying there is that it's actually running through the processor of the Apple TV is running the game, and you are just engaging with it from your phone as a controller or from some sort of Bluetooth controller or something like that, right?
Yes.
So it's still the same game.
That's right.
It's still the same service, but you're getting it maybe from two different platforms, right? Or two.
Well, that is one really nice thing about, and I know we're kind of bearing the lead a little bit here. We're going to talk about these services. Yeah. And we've already mentioned Apple Arcade a couple times. That is one thing that we want to talk about is the fact that with these new subscription services, and I say new, Google's had one for a little longer than Apple Arcade has, but Apple, Google, both have services that allow you to pay money per month. And when you do that, you have full access to their library of games or other apps. The nice thing, Brian, kind of getting back to what you're talking about is, yes, once you have that subscription, you are able to play these games on your mobile device that's logged into the account that has the subscription. Or on a case of Apple, the Apple TV, you can download and play those games on your TV, the same games you would be playing on your mobile device. The Google Play Pass, which is their version of their $5 a month subscription service, will let you play on Android devices the games as well. Now, whether or not that means it translates to a large screen through a media box or not, I'm not sure about that. I haven't had experience with the Google Play Pass, but the idea is that, yes, at least on the Apple Arcade side, I can log in on my Apple TV, pull up Apple Arcade. It knows what games I was playing on my mobile device already. Let me play those same games. I can even pick up a game where I left off. And the Apple TV can offer to let you use your phone as a controller, or you can use like John said, an Xbox Bluetooth controller or other ones that are compatible with it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, let me go a little. You can also go ahead, John. Sorry.
Well, I was going to say you can also use your computer for those games as well.
Okay.
Which is really cool to me because I'll occasionally, instead of moving from the phone to the Apple TV, actually a lot of times move from the Apple TV to my computer, to my laptop.
Yeah.
Just because a little bigger screen and it's real nice to do it that way.
Okay. Well, Alan, let me ask both of you really quickly. So, because I'm intrigued now. So I know a little bit about Apple Arcade, right? I haven't used it before, but I know that it's a subscription. There's lots of games that are on there. I think initially my understanding was there are lots of maybe entry-level games, kind of a lot of just, quickly jump in, play, but the idea behind a subscription. So tell me why I should be interested in a subscription as opposed to a console in which I'm going to buy the games that are really in, maybe one-off buying that game. So tell me why.
Sure. Let me hit this, and John, you jump in with anything I miss here.
All right.
Be prepared. He's going to miss a lot, but be prepared. Yeah.
Well, first off, from a cost standpoint, I think if you're someone that wants to make better use of money when it comes to gaming, going into a console, buying games outright is definitely the more expensive route to go. A subscription-based service for games on a mobile platform, I already mentioned Apple Arcade is $5 a month. Google Play Pass is $5 a month. And both of these have well over 100 games or apps to choose from. I think Apple Arcade, when it was announced, they said 100 games was their goal to have. I think it's over 100 games right now. I don't know what the exact number is. The Google Play Pass, as of just this past year, had over 350 apps and games. Not all of them are games, but a fair number of them are. So right away, for $5 a month, you think about that. That's $60 a year. You're spending games on a console to buy a singular game is about $50 or $60 a brand new game. Now, you could argue that those console games, if you had an Xbox or PlayStation, the games are probably bigger. They take a lot more time to play. They're more complex. They're more graphic intensive and all that. But for the cost of one game a year, you could translate to over 100 games to pick from on a mobile device. And I think, again, this is not for hardcore gamers who say they really want to spend, the next several months really digging deep into a very big, expansive game. this is for somebody who likes the idea of playing games, who doesn't mind trying some games out, download a game. That game isn't really for me. Okay, fine. Get rid of it, and I'm going to go play another one. You can have multiple games installed and downloaded on your phone ready to play as part of that subscription. So it gives you a chance to try out some games and gives you a chance to experiment a little bit. I mean, I've downloaded plenty of games that looked really cool, and I started playing them. I'm like, nah, this isn't really for me. And there's no heartache there because I just get rid of it and download another one, as opposed to if I'd gone out and bought a $60 game, started playing it, I'm like, whoa, boy, I don't like this. Well, then I'm kind of stuck a little bit. Do I go ahead and try to sell it? Do I return it? What do I do? And I think it's just a safer way to get into gaming without the commitment up front. That's my take on the pros of a subscription service. John, is there anything I'm missing on a subscription service like this that's better?
Could you correct him, please? Whatever he missed.
Well, as you're talking, what I'm wondering is, so I'm on the Apple Arcade main page. I'm looking at the games that they have, like the top 10. Like one of them's NBA 2K22. I mean, but they also have Oregon Trail. So I mean, they've got like really high end games and basic games, but they're all really good games. Kind of what I wonder is if Apple was worried that without a subscription model, were we running to where either developers were going to start charging $50 over the App Store for their games, or more likely were they just not going to produce these high quality games for the iPhone because, I'm used to paying a $1.99 for a game, and now you're telling me I need to pay $50 for one. So I'm wondering if maybe this was Apple's play to get these developers to produce really high end games and give them the revenue streams that they want to have. Which they really would have a problem charging $50 a pop over the console, or I'm sorry, over the mobile phone.
I think Apple had to do this to stay in the game business at all, because the market on the Mac is just not big enough for people who really want to spend $50, $60 on a game. It's just not going to happen. It hasn't happened. The Mac has been a computer that could play games, but nobody's ever made a play for it because they felt like the market's too small and the clientele are not the ones going out and spending that kind of money on games. But you tell them they can spend $5 a month, or even better, roll it into an Apple One subscription where you get it for free, basically, for your monthly cost. Then all of a sudden you got people saying, well, maybe I'll start playing the game now. Maybe I'll try this out a little bit because I'm already paying for it. Or it's super inexpensive per month. I think you're right, John. I think they had to kind of do it if they wanted to stay in this business.
Okay, so John.
Well, like you said, I mean, there weren't really any great games just that were Apple exclusive. I mean, the only one I could think of is maybe Marathon, which was made by the people who eventually made Halo. It was Bungie, and that was a great game. If you never played
John,
Marathon,
you and I have
an old Mac.
John, you and I have some good memories of playing Marathon on our Macs back, networking them together in their office building, and
that
after
was
hours.
awesome.
It was a lot of fun.
Nothing better. Nothing better.
So getting back to on the mobile subscriptions, Brian.
Yep.
Just again trying to kind of sell you on the idea. The thing about the Apple Arcade, and I think the same with Google Play, is I think developers can be a lot more experimental with the kind of games they produce under this kind of environment. I've seen some games that are the weirdest games I've ever noticed on an Apple Arcade subscription. Ones that are not going to have a mass market appeal. You're not going to have a developer spending all this time and then releasing it, like you said, for $50, $60 to try to sell it. But because there's an automatic funnel of possible customers, developers are getting really creative. I've seen some just really unique games that are not ones you would normally find on a traditional console because of this form factor, because of this different play experience on a mobile device. It really just makes for an interesting experience. So here's a good example, Brian. There's a game, and this is on, I'm pretty sure, both the Google and Apple Arcade, called it's like Sasquatch. What is the name of that game, John?
It's what is it?
Is it Hungry Sasquatch?
It's actually it's Sneaky Sasquatch.
Sneaky Sasquatch. Okay. And the game is this, Brian. You are a Sasquatch. You're a little Sasquatch character, and you're having to sneak around a campsite to eat food and to possibly take things that you need. Maybe you're trying to help some of the campers, but you can't be seen. If you are seen by one of the campers, you're in trouble. And again, this is not a game that anybody would have gone out and spent $60 on, or would have been a major release on a big console. But on a gaming platform, on a mobile gaming platform, it's tons of fun. And I don't mind burning an hour on it and then maybe not picking it up for a couple more weeks and then playing it for another hour or two. It doesn't
just like
require heavy
investment.
Camping.
Yeah.
What's that?
That's how I like to camp. Sneaking around and stealing food. So
I was going to say, I'm here in the Northwest. I usually do that in real time. Go to campgrounds and sneak around. But the fact that I could do that in my own house, that's kind of cool. Another
game like that is Where Cards Fall. I don't know if you play. I mean, an awesome game. Really, really weird. It's just kind of a very odd game, but it has. It has a lot of playability. You can play for a long time. Pretty decent storyline, but it's not one that I think anybody would go out and search for unless it were part of a subscription service like this.
That's right.
So I think you're right. I think that it does allow a lot of experimentation.
It's exactly the same model as Netflix or any other streaming service. You're watching things that you wouldn't have gone out of your way to seek out and purchase or rent. But you're now watching them because they're part of a subscription, and you see a wider variety of things that you've probably ever seen before. The same thing with the games on the mobile device.
So let me ask: do you think that because I'm trying to think? Obviously, Alan, people hang on our every word on this podcast, right? And they listen to try to decide, should I do this service? Should I pay for the service or not? Right? So what I'm getting is what I'm understanding is that as a gaming service like this seems like would be a great opportunity for someone who maybe is not fully committed on a particular game, doesn't necessarily get so enveloped with a game that they'd love to just change around and actually pass time, right? Someone that wants to get their mind off other things and be able to try something else out. Because it doesn't sound like these are games that, I'm going to spend weeks and weeks and weeks trying to conquer this game, right? Or maybe there is, I don't know. But it sounds like a lot of them are one shot. I could go and spend an hour, and I'm super excited about spending that hour. And then later I can pick it up again and spend another hour and still be totally engaged with it. But I'm not necessarily thinking about that same game every minute since the last hour I played, like I think a lot of really in-depth games tend to do, right? Is that a fair assessment?
Yes. I think in general you're right, Brian, but I will say that there are some games that are going to, if you get into the right kind of games and you become kind of focused and obsessive about it, there's absolutely opportunities to be that way with these games. But I think you're right in that, in more generally speaking, these are casual games, meaning it's truly meant to be, hey, I've got an extra little bit of time. I want to play something for a little bit, or I want to unwind at the end of the day. I'm not going to buy a big gaming chair and have my whole setup in front of a TV and I'm blocking off the rest of the night type of thing.
Don't make fun of John. Don't make fun of John if he does that. Seriously.
I do it too. So
we don't judge, John. We don't judge.
This is more of a, look, I got some downtime. I want to play something for a little bit. I got my device in front of me. What can I play that's kind of fun and engaging? That's going to be more of the experience for most people.
Okay.
So the games are getting better and better. So there definitely are those opportunities for very involved, complex games, more so than there has been in the past.
So say someone like me who does not get into gaming or has not gotten into gaming, but it seems appealing to me to have a game that can distract me, but is not going to necessarily send me down a rabbit hole that I need to be in this thing for a really, really long time. That's my concern, right? So let me ask you. But let me ask you: am I the person that should be getting a service because I can actually find the game that is only the Tetris type of game that I can just play and I can get done, right? Whereas if I go and say I'm going to go get a gaming console just to get Tetris. And now I'm stuck with Tetris, right? Or whatever. I'm throwing out ideas. That to me is not what I'm about, right? That's not the kind of consumer that is going to be there. Now, let me ask you. So I've always looked at this as, so all of the entertainment models seem to be going this way, right? Music has gone to subscription because they don't want you to have to pay for simply the albums, right? That you're going to be limited. Netflix has gone that model where we want you to have access to things to keep you busy and keep you interested, but not that, you're going to want to, because we know you're not going to want to spend a ton of money on something. But with the movie world, they still expect big time movies for you to go and pay for that one-off movie, right? Where you're going to go and actually go to the movies, or you're going to go and stream that movie or something. Is that still the same idea here, that big time games will never show up on these services?
As of today, you're probably right. The big, huge video game releases. I mean, John mentioned Halo, a little bit ago. Is like that's a premier video game series.
A Call of Duty or something like that, right? They're not necessarily right now on these services.
Well, they're not meant for mobile devices. They're not really meant for a mobile experience yet. But now premier mobile games do start to show up on some of these subscription services. But, you're right. The ones that they still want you spending $50, $60 on, and you need a real dedicated console to play it at its full capacity, are not going to be on these mobile subscription services. Now, that being said, just commenting on your thoughts about gaming as a subscription service, my son, as I mentioned, has an Xbox subscription, pays, I forget what it is per month for access to their game library.
So it's
they just announced, $15 a month. Halo, which is a premier, Microsoft Xbox game, the new Halo that comes out this year in December next month is going to be premiering and available on the Game Pass system. Now, granted, Microsoft's doing that because they want people to buy their game service and pay the monthly subscription fee. So that's a good way to entice them in. But that's normally a game that you would spend $60 on to buy, is now going to be a part of this $15 a month Game Pass. So I honestly believe, just like even with movies over the past year, especially during the pandemic, we saw some big releases go straight to some streaming services. I think games are going to be the same way over time. We're already seeing it happen now. So I still believe almost every form of media we experience nowadays, subscription models are their future. And I think it's just going to take time to get those big ones, the big releases, into that subscription model naturally. But we're getting there.
Okay, so let me ask one more question, and John, let me pose this to you. Do you? So I don't know enough about these services, but are these services where I go in and I pay one price and I get to enjoy the entire game? Or am I stuck to a paywall where I get to a certain point to say, if you want to go further, you have to pay extra? Are the Apple games, are the Google games, are they kind of free and open? You're going to play forever and never have to pay anything else? I honestly don't know. Are there additional paywalls?
I know that on the Apple Arcade there are no paywalls. I mean, and what's interesting is I played a game. It was and I say I played it. I mean, it was a very short game. I mean, I only played it for a little bit, but it was clearly a game that had originally been a free to start, and then you paid along the way. And they had actually stripped all that out to create a new version of the game. And so there were places I was like, I bet they normally made people pay for this. But I know that the way that Apple's done it, you got the whole game. There's nothing to pay. There are no additional in-app purchases or anything like that. Once you got the game, that is the game.
And they're not creating a gateway drug like I know the model was prior to these services, right? The model was, hey, come play this. Oh, look at that. You've reached a certain point. Are you addicted yet? Pay a little extra and you get a little further. So that's not the Apple model, at least.
Not at all. As a matter of fact, I mean, I think Apple prohibits it for those apps, and there's still apps outside of the arcade, of course, that are like that, and they still have the the free to play. but then you have the in-app purchases, but you also have the ones that have ads. None of these even have ads in them, which is really nice. I mean, it is just as if you had bought a $50 console game, only it's it's part of a subscription on your phone, so there aren't ads, there aren't in-app purchases. It's you got the full thing. It's a pretty sweet deal for $5 a month.
So you can see why this would be beneficial for both of you, being parents, maybe to say, as a parent, I can budget that, and my kid's always going to have something new to try, and I'm not going to be pestered by, here's the new game that's coming out, right? This is kind of a nice model to budget off of and still have entertainment and engagement for the people in the family. So I can see the benefit of that. Yeah.
And Brian, let me mention on that same note, there's just a couple more pros I want to mention about these subscription services before I do tell you some cons, because there are a few things I think you need to be aware of if you go into a subscription service on somebody's mobile gaming. John already mentioned that, both the Google and the Apple subscription services will allow you to use external controllers, which is nice. So if you do want to go out and I've got one that's what is the name of it? It's not a PlayStation or Xbox controller, but it looks like one. It was made like a Razer, I believe. I forget the brand name, but it was made mainly for the Apple TV or for the iPad to use as a controller. And it feels like an actual console controller to use, which is great. But both the Apple and Google Play Pass will allow you to use those external controllers. They will allow you to play on multiple devices. I think you can do up to 10 devices with the same iCloud account on your Apple side. You can do up to 10 devices with the same Google Play account on Google or Android devices. And then sharing games, if you have a family sharing setup on your Apple devices, you can share your arcade games with up to 5 other family members. You can do up to 6 members on the Google Play family library. So if you have a subscription and you've got a family, you can share the games with them, let them play as well. So back to your parenting thing, you as a parent could actually get a subscription, let your kids play these games. You don't have to worry about them funneling more money into it. And you yourself also have access to them as well. So it's kind of nice.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good sides to the subscription service. I mean, I'm a big fan of it. But I'm going to mention something there, but there are some downsides, and you guys can chime in some others you can think of, I'm sure. You don't own the games if you get a subscription service for these mobile devices. So it's very possible you may be playing your absolute favorite game on these subscription services in 1 month. An announcement's made, and that game is no longer going to be available on that service, which means you don't own the games. You have no right to it after they take it off the service. Same thing with Netflix and other movie services. You've sometimes seen that movies are taken off the service and are no longer available. Them's the breaks. I mean, you don't own the movie, so you can't just claim that you have it anymore. So there's that challenge. I think we mentioned too. I mean, if the games on the subscription services are not going to be your premier, top of the line, high intensive games. They're going to be good games for a mobile experience, but they're not going to be, you're not going to be playing Call of Duty or Halo or anything, a big console game on these mobile devices or any of these subscription services. Outside of those I don't have any other cons. The biggest thing is just knowing you don't own the game, so you just need to be aware that games may come and leave from the service over time. Is there any other cons I'm forgetting, John? Anything that's a downside of subscription-based gaming?
I mean, I think that, of course, you don't have a huge library. I mean, it was like Netflix streaming in the early years where you still had to go out and find specific titles outside of the streaming service. I think that's still the case here. And that's going to be the case in a lot of, for any service, at least for a while, because we still have those mega blockbuster games where the model is just too appealing for them to charge us $50 or $60 for a game. And that hadn't changed yet. But, it actually, thinking about one of your cons, Alan, that we don't really own the game. In a lot of cases, we don't own the game anyway. And so, one of the games I really enjoyed that I used to play was the monkey ball, where, the little monkey would be in the ball, and it was for I played it with the iPhone 2, I think, wherever you could actually, that was one of the first games that came out. They stopped updating. I think they stopped updating the game. And so, of course, it doesn't work on the phone anymore. I mean, okay, there went my $1.99, but, it was $1.99. So, but we've also got Xbox games like that, too, that won't play on the new Xbox because they've just aged out. I mean, I guess I could keep the Xbox just to play this game. Like I could still be playing the original Halo.
Yeah.
Or I could pay another $50 and get it as part of the package so I can relive the early Halo days. So, I think there are a lot of pros, really. If you like to play games even just a little bit, $5 a month, I think is pretty reasonable for a pretty big library of very unique and a wide range of games. So I think it's worth it.
I mean, that was only 20 games at the arcade, guys, right? So, I mean, 25 cents a game, right? So that for a month, right? Getting, $5, that does sound pretty good if there's an interest in there. Let me ask you one more question here real quick. Is there a downside? So someone who does Apple Arcade, can they use an Android device? And someone who does Google, can they use a iOS device? So if I have a family that is dual platform, is that a problem?
No, you're spending $10 a month instead of $5 a month, basically.
So it is.
It's
strictly for the platform only, right?
Absolutely. Okay. Apple Arcade is only for. It's really devices from the last. I think last I saw their system requirements, it was iPhone SE is like the oldest it goes back to that you can run Apple Arcade on now. But it's only Apple devices, Macs, Apple TVs, iPads, iPhones. The Google Play Pass is mobile, laptop, and tablet devices with the Play Store app installed on it, which is a Android app that you have to run. So, yes, you are very much restricted on platform.
Okay.
With that.
All right.
A mixed household will not be able to share games between the two subscription services. So.
Okay. All right. Okay. I got one more question and you guys take it wherever you want, but one more question that I truly don't know. Can you, with these types of games, play with multiple people at the same time? So is this like Alan, you and I at Christmas sitting in the same room could be playing the exact same game against each other or with each other? Is that sort of game involved, available with these types of services?
John,
so one of the games that's coming out tomorrow is Transformers Tactical Arena, and so it's basically it's a multiplayer game that uses where you have the different Transformer characters. And I mean, so you were talking about being in the same room. It's not you don't even have to be in the same room. You can be, as long as you're both connected to the internet, you can play over the internet. One of the games I've been playing, probably more than I ever should, is the Sonic Racing with Sonic the Hedgehog. It's just fun. It takes 2 minutes to get around the track. But you're always playing against people in the real world. Quite a few of these games are meant to be played multiplayer, and I can play with people I know, or they'll pair me up with someone random. Pretty much like a console game.
Cool. Yeah. Okay. All right.
And Brian, on that same note, a lot of the games I know, at least on the Apple Arcade, and I'm sure it's the same on the Google Play, if you have the capability of playing them on your TV set. I know on the Apple Arcade games, if I had 2 people or 3 people in the room with me, and we all have our iPhones, some games will allow for multiplayer on the same device you're watching, the same TV or same screen. It just allows everybody to open up their iPhone and open up the game, and you can all play together on the same screen. So that's available as well, and that's a lot of fun. So.
Okay. So I apologize. I said I had one more. I had only one question, but I've got one more that just came up. That's actually probably the most important question that I would have asked the entire episode, which is, can I get on a leaderboard put my initials, my 3-letter initials for the leaderboard, and have that always showing on the front of my iPhone when anybody comes by to show that I am at the top of the leaderboard. I mean, that was the goal of playing, the arcade games, was to put your initials at the top. Is there a leaderboard in these types of games? And can I create bad word leaderboards, names that would embarrass everyone else that sees it? Very important. Please discuss.
I think the answer is yes. I mean, right? There are some that will let you do that, right?
All right.
John?
$5 a month seems absolutely worth it. So. All right, cool.
One other little thing I'll mention, just before I forget, as we're wrapping this up, keep in mind with these games that you download or play, the games are getting more and more interesting as we go along, as computing power goes higher. The games are getting more graphically intensive. They're getting more expensive. They do take up space. And so I have noticed a lot of times, especially on an Apple TV, or if you have a phone that's a relatively limited storage on it, these games do have to download. And even though it's tempting, if you have a subscription service to say, I'm going to go ahead and download 30 games to have on my phone all the time. Well, that's 30 games that all take up a lot of room. And so just be aware of that. Now, the good thing about a subscription service is you can delete a game off your phone or off your device, reinstall it later. So it's not like you lose the game if you have to take it off your device. You can always reinstall it.
But do you lose the leaderboard?
No, actually, it can save your game data for you on your account so you don't lose it. But I know some people have the Apple TVs with pretty small hard drives on them, pretty small storage. And you download 3 or 4 of these games and you're going to find yourself already out of space. So that's one thing I will say. It's not a con. It's more of just a remember. And this is going to be the case for Google, Apple, anywhere. Space is always going to be something you got to be mindful of. You got to be mindful on a console as well when you download games. But I think on a mobile device, since we're using these devices for a lot of other things, photos, videos, other apps, just keep in mind you're having to share space with everything else on your device for these games. So, well, that's kind of what I wanted us to talk about a little bit with the gaming. I mean, just to let really people know, mobile gaming is an option. It's an inexpensive option you can get into now. And of course, having companies like Apple and Google putting a lot of resources to providing some good subscription services means you can feel pretty good that there's a good quality level of games out there to play that are going to cover a lot of different variety of interest and wants in the gaming world. And I'm a big fan. I don't think I'll ever buy a game again outright. I feel like on the Apple Arcade, even if there's only 2 or 3 games I like playing right now, that's still 2 or 3 games I don't have to go out and buy specifically and deal with. So I'm a big fan. John, sounds like you're a fan of the subscription service as well.
I am. And, every week you get the email from Apple saying, here's what's coming on Friday. And like, maybe I'll give that a try. So, yeah, I've found a lot of really, just fun games that I'll play for, a little bit or a whole lot. And it doesn't matter because I've got something to do now.
So, Brian, do you think we've converted you in any way? Are you going to try anything out? Or
I think it's quite possible that you guys may never see me again, and I'll be kind of stuck, in the
mission accomplished.
That's right. I'll be stuck in the back room playing games all the time. No, we'll see. I mean, I do say for someone like me who is not a gamer, who doesn't really think about games, is not, to me, the only games that really have intrigued me in the past have been a quick puzzle, some sort of mind bender or whatever. Yeah. But I could see the fact that a subscription would allow me to do those things and not feel guilty about it and not feel as though I need to put a lot of money or effort into researching the game. I could try it. That is appealing. Yeah. So, I'm not sure you could totally convince me, but you gave me a lot of things to think about. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, that's what we wanted to do here. So that's mobile gaming. That's a little bit of the state of mobile gaming these days. The fact of the matter is, if you've got a fairly, I'll say in the last 4 or 5 years, phone or device that you're using right now, there is a gaming service available for it that you could subscribe to for very low money per month and get access to a nice, high quality assortment of games to play. It's perfect for those casual gamers that are not looking to invest a lot of money or time, but like the idea of using their device to have some entertainment on there as well. So hopefully I gave you a little bit of insight into that. Brian, if somebody did have some thoughts that we missed when regarding gaming, or to talk about some gaming options out there, besides just the big two, the Google and Apple ones, how should they let us know about those?
Well, send us an email at info@themesh.tv. That's info@themesh.tv. Tell us some of the gaming platforms or ideas, or what you think the future of gaming might be, so that we I think this could be a potentially another topic we get into in the future about bigger game consoles, and
sure,
bringing in some people that know about those as well. We'll probably have to bring John back, right? Because he obviously seems to have the best of everything when it comes to gaming. So send us a note.
We'll bring John back, and I'm going to have my two boys take the place of me.
Exactly. Just bring the kids in.
Yeah,
bring them in.
Just going to let them take control of the episode.
So info@themesh.tv.
Perfect. John, thanks for joining us for this conversation. Appreciate the insight.
Always enjoy it. Thanks for having me.
Man, that was a lot better than I thought it would be, John. Nice. Thanks for being
Appreciate
here.
it. Thank you.
That's great. Well, thanks everybody for listening to Brothers in Tech and our discussion of mobile gaming. We will look forward to talking to everybody next time. I think, is it true? Our next episode is our Brothers in Tech suggestions episode.
Yes.
Always our favorite. Always our favorite. So stay tuned for that. That should be coming up next week. Thanks everybody for joining us tonight, and we will look forward to talking to you all next time. Take care.
Bye-bye.
You've been listening to The Mesh, an online media network of shows and programs ranging from business to arts, sports to entertainment, music to community. All programs are available on the website as well as through iTunes and YouTube. Check us out online at themesh.tv. Discover other network shows and give us feedback on what you just heard.